The movie kicks off by setting the stage for the upcoming game in the 1958 FIFA World Cup. So, the game is on between Brazil and the USSR. A big crowd is cheering for the game, but the commentary is pretty harsh, focusing on criticizing Brazil's style of playing football. Meanwhile, the scene moves to Brazil, where we meet Pelé, the youngest player to ever take the field in a World Cup. Then, we jump back in time to 8 years earlier, where a bunch of kids are busy polishing shoes, all while itching to play some football. The kids just don't have a decent football to play with because of the tough living conditions. So, they grab some clothes from around the neighborhood and stuff them into socks to create a football. Before long, the group is having a blast with their homemade football, tossing it from one roof to another and making sure it never hits the ground. Later on, one of the kids playing football, Daiko, gets a telling off from his mom for coming home all dirty. In the next scene, a bunch of guys, including Daiko's dad, are hanging out at a restaurant, tuning into a football commentary. So, it's the 1950 FIFA World Cup final, right? Brazil is up against Uruguay, and you can just feel the excitement in the air as everyone is hoping for a Brazil victory. The kids are up on the broken roof of the restaurant, trying to catch some info about the game that's happening right now. Sadly, Brazil didn't win the game. So, Daiko's dad just starts crying. When Daiko sees his dad in tears, he makes a promise to himself that one day, he'll bring home the World Cup for their country. The following day, Daiko's mom brings him along to her job at this massive mansion to help out with cleaning the floors. She tells him how his dad messed up his football career because of an injury, and that's why she's not keen on him playing football. Right when she walks out of the kitchen, a bunch of wealthy guys come in and start chatting about various football players. Daiko jumps into their chat and brings up a local football player, Pelé, but he ends up mispronouncing it as Pele. The boys tease him and start calling him Pelé as a joke. So, Daiko's mom comes back and tells him he should say sorry to the boys, even though he wasn't there. Before heading out, Daiko picks up a newspaper that the boys brought, which talks about a football tournament. Later on, we see Daiko and his crew heading to the same football tournament and signing up to join in. Even though they might not have the best gear and seem a bit underprivileged, their football skills are incredible, often outshining nearly every team in the tournament. Before long, they find themselves in the finals, facing off against the same group of boys who teased Daiko at his mom's job. The boys are quite a bit older than Daiko and his friends, and they also have a proper football kit. The leader of the group jokes around with Daiko's team, playfully calling them the shoeless boys since they're playing in the tournament without any football boots on. After catching wind of the insults, his team decides they need to get boots for the next game, no matter what it takes. So, the group is thinking about swiping some peanuts and then selling them off to score some secondhand boots. While they're in the middle of it, the seller spots them and starts chasing after them. So, Daiko and his crew find a way to sneak out and make it to the market. In the next scene, as the group is busy selling peanuts to the public, the finalist group of boys shows up and starts throwing insults their way once more. Daiko gets really upset by their insults and ends up hitting the leader, which sparks a fight between the two groups. At home, Daiko's mom asks him about the bruises, and he tells her that his teacher hit him. Daiko's dad jumps in and says he'll talk to the teacher tomorrow. After the mother leaves, Daiko's dad brings him to work, and during the ride, he mentions that he's aware of the fight and the football game. Rather than getting upset, he recommends that Daiko set his feelings aside and respond to the opponents using his skills. Daiko feels happy knowing his dad is right there with him. The big day is finally here. Everyone is cheering for the rich boys, but they can't help but poke fun at Daiko by calling him Pelé. Daiko and his team finally got their hands on some football boots, but it looks like they might be a bit too big for their size. But they're still stuck in those uncomfortable boots, which really slows down Daiko and his team. The opposing team really capitalized on this, scoring goal after goal and pushing the score to 6-0. Daiko and his team are feeling pretty down about the situation and are really upset with the opponents for their foul play. Daiko, feeling furious, gets ready to charge at his opponents, but then he catches sight of his father in the crowd and hesitates. So, he decides to kick off those uncomfortable shoes and just play the game like they used to back in their streets. So, after that, he grabs the ball and weaves around the opponents, totally surprising the crowd with his incredible skills and scoring the first goal. Before long, all of his teammates kick off their big boots and start playing in their own style. So, here's the thing. The game really shifts gears, and Daiko's team starts to take control big time. His teammates are all getting in on the action, weaving through the opponents and finding the back of the net, bringing the score to 6-5. So, Daiko and his team didn't win the game, but you know what? The crowd was really impressed by how mesmerizing they played. So, everyone begins to chant Pele's name. Right after the game wraps up, they notice the guys they swiped the peanuts from the other day. The guys start chasing them, and the young boys dash into the forest. A friend of Pele's trips over a branch and takes a tumble on the ground. Pele comes back to lend a hand and leads him to a little hole in the ground to take cover. Out of nowhere, it begins to rain, and then a landslide happens. He ends up burying his friend, and in the end, he dies too. Pele, feeling completely overwhelmed, goes back home and breaks down in front of his mom, feeling like he's to blame for his friend's death. The next day, Pele's dad brings him to work, hoping to take his mind off what happened to his friend. He's trying to lift his spirits by showing off some of his skills while playing with mangoes. Pele brushes him off for a few days, but eventually, he starts hanging out and practicing with the mangoes. Fast forward a few years, and Pele is now 15 years old. His mom sees him practicing with his dad and finally decides to reach out to a football scout named Waldemar de Brito to come and check him out on the field. Pele walks in and feels a wave of happiness seeing Waldemar just hanging out at home, waiting for him. Waldemar thinks it would be a great idea for Pele to try out for the local football club's trials. In the next scene, Pele is getting ready for professional football with the Santos football team. He doesn't kick things off very well and struggles to get the hang of the classic way of playing football. Pele, feeling a bit down about his performance, decides it's time to head back home. At the train station, Waldemar runs into him and asks why he's back. Pele shares that he feels his style of playing football isn't really accepted at the academy and that the coach doesn't seem to like him. Waldemar shares that his approach to playing football is known as the Jenga style, a technique that has roots dating back to the era of slavery. He talks about how he plays best in that same style, but he also points out that this style was blamed for Brazil's World Cup loss back in 1950. Finally, he tells Pele that he can either stick around and show everyone what he's made of or head back home and be seen as a coward. Once Waldemar heads out, Pele takes a moment to think things over and ultimately decides to stick around. The following day, during a match, Pele makes a few questionable calls that frustrate both him and his coach. Out of the blue, he recalls the times he and his dad trained with the Mangoes and spots Waldemar cheering him on. He then chooses to play in the way he's familiar with. He grabs the ball and smoothly dribbles it right between the legs of his opponents. He sends the ball soaring into the air, just like he practiced with the Mangoes, and scores a goal. The coach can't believe how Pele scored that goal and tells him to show it off again. Pele scores again, leaving all the spectators amazed with his classic football skills. He's still at it with other teams and is beginning to make a name for himself, even though he's the youngest player on the squad. Not long after, Pele moves up from the junior team to the pro team, playing matches against teams all over the country. When he got back from his trip, he decided to drop by home unexpectedly, bringing along some gifts for the family, like a radio for his dad. They choose to tune in to hear the announcement of Brazil's national team for the 1958 World Cup. Pele feels like there's no chance for him to make it onto the national team since he's still too young. Even so, they tune in to the announcement, and to their surprise, Pele makes the team. As Pele is getting ready to leave with the national team, his dad encourages him to have faith in himself and his unique style of playing football. Pele heads out and then catches up with his teammates, who appear to be pretty friendly. But the reporters there are poking fun at Brazil's Jenga-style approach to football on the international stage. So, after that, the national team coach gets in touch with Pele for a meeting and gives him a heads up about not playing that Jenga style of football. The next day, Pele gives the traditional European style a shot, just like the coach recommended, but he struggles a bit with it. So, he decides to give it a shot his own way, but ends up tripping and hurting his knee along the way. The team doctor takes a look at him and, unfortunately, confirms that the injury could keep him out of the World Cup. At night, Pele gives his mom a call to let her know about his injury. His mom is really surprised to hear it, but she still tells him to keep the faith and look after himself. The World Cup kicks off, and the Brazilian team pulls off a couple of wins in their opening matches. Since the games are pretty intense and competitive, quite a few players on the team end up getting injured. With no other options, an injured Pelé gets the call to play for his country. Pelé feels a bit nervous and tries to come up with a few excuses, but his coach insists he gets out there and plays. In the next scene, Pelé and his team step onto the field, and his coach gives him a little nudge to stick to the game plan and play football the classic way. Pelé follows his coach's advice during the game, and the Brazilian team ends up winning. So, the next game is against France, and guess what? It's the semi-final. So, the Brazilian team is trailing France 1-0 at halftime. While taking a break, Pelé glances around the dressing room and spots the injured and exhausted players. Feeling a bit down, he goes to one of his teammates to see if they can take over for him in the second half. But his teammate says no, mentioning that he's not in the right headspace to play football. He also mentions that he's tired of the traditional European way of playing football and wants to play the Jenga style like they did when they were kids. Finally, he suggests that Pelé should play a Jenga style of football to help his team win the match. After the half, Pelé gets back into the game, and when he misses a pass, he recalls his teammate's suggestion to play it the Jenga way. Pelé then goes for the ball and starts weaving through the players effortlessly and flawlessly. People can't believe their eyes as they watch Pelé skillfully bounce the ball over the players to score an incredible goal for his team. Once the scores are tied, Pelé steps up and nets 2 more goals, clinching the win for his team and earning a spot in the finals. As the final against Sweden gets closer, the Brazilian national coach gathers the team for a meeting and emphasizes the importance of playing in their traditional style of football. He's showing them some smart tactics and also encouraging them to copy the formation of the Swedish players during the game. During training, he works on getting the players to use different formations, but he doesn't notice any improvement in their game. At the press conference with both teams, the coach of the Swedish team jokes about how Brazil plays the game. He also mentions that if Brazil keeps playing the same way, they might end up losing the finals just like they did back in 1950. Feeling frustrated with the opposing coach bringing down the spirits of the national team, Brazil's coach abruptly leaves the conference. Late at night, Pelé picks up the phone and tells his dad all about the tough spot the team is in. After hearing this, his father suggests that he bring the team together like he did when he was a kid. The next day, with the idea of bringing the team together, Pelé throws down a challenge for the players. They need to get the ball from the hotel to the nearest lighthouse. Initially, everyone says no, but before long, they come around and decide to join in. They begin to kick the football around, making sure it never hits the ground. The coach sees this and realizes that what he's teaching the team isn't right. Not long after, he faces the team and owns up to his mistake of teaching them the formations and the traditional style of football. He's suggesting that the team play in a Jenga style during the finals and really showcase the Brazilian way of playing football. He also tells his team to have fun and to really bring their best game against Sweden in the finals. Today's the big day for the finals, and both teams are all set to go head-to-head. The whistle blows, and just like that, the Swedish team finds the back of the net within the first 4 minutes of the game. All the Brazilian fans are just stunned watching the Swedish players dance around Pelé, keeping him from getting the ball. But before long, the Brazilian players gather themselves, and Pelé sets up the first goal for the team. The Brazilian team keeps scoring, and Pelé is right there with them. Before long, the final whistle blows, and the game wraps up with a score of 5-2. Brazil takes home the World Cup for the very first time ever. Pelé's teammates rush onto the field and hoist him up on their shoulders. So, the scene changes to those genuine moments right after Brazil clinches the finals. So, in the final scene, we learn that Pelé was named a national treasure by the Brazilian president back in 1961. Pelé has the world record for the most goals and is also the youngest player to score in a World Cup match. He's the only player who's won 3 FIFA World Cups,